Welcome to another episode of Culture of Value. I am your host, Troy Shear. I'm a CMO with Binary Automotive Solutions and Binary Marketing Solutions. And today, this is going to be fun, I think, because it's something we really need to talk about in terms of where things are within the website development world and how things are going and where we're going. We have the founder and CEO of 321 Ignition, Lyman Savvy, here today, and looking very forward to this conversation. First, we're going to let her kind of talk a bit about her background and kind of what she's accomplished, because it's just what she's accomplished is an amazing feat. But also coming from another country and coming here and being an immigrant and all the things that she's done here. I want to let her kind of tell that story a little bit, and then we'll get into more of the real website side of things. So I'm going to let you take it away, Lyman. Get your background in there, because I think real people definitely will get value from that, and then we'll get rolling.
Well, where do I start? I mean, my background is, I came to America when I was 9 years old. We came here as refugees. My mom married an Armenian guy, and we're Azerbaijan. And so, as you could imagine, back in the 1989 to 1991, there was a huge war between the two countries, and people were getting killed. So we ran away to America, and we were placed in Seattle, Washington, as refugees, and we've been here pretty much ever since. My background professionally, I've worked always in a technology world. I mean, living here in Washington State, as you know, that's where we have the Microsoft, the Amazon, like a lot of startup companies that became publicly traded, and really huge companies got acquired. So I'm really in the hub of a place where, I'm feeding off a lot of energy and things that are happening in the technology world. My background is very unique. I've been doing marketing for 19 years. And my subject matter expertise is I'm really, really, really good at acquiring customers. So every company has ever acquired me, it's because they want to grow their customer base, they want to grow their revenue, they want to increase their profitability, and I'm the person they come to how to do it. And so I've done everything from brand awareness, traditional marketing, direct response marketing, paid media. Of course, you have to be really good at analytics anytime you do any of that stuff. And so I've always said, because I'm in marketing, I have to diversify. I've always switched companies every 3 to 4 years. I don't believe in staying in the same company, especially when you do marketing, because then you become a prisoner of your past. You've always done things a certain way. And with my very broad range of, working for Microsoft, Capital One, House Values, which is now Zillow, DataSphere, which is now Sinclair Broadcast, my background is very diverse. And it's always made me be really good at customer acquisition, because I've always brought, here's the things I've learned from here. Here's the things I learned from there. Now, how does this apply for this industry versus just keep doing what we've always done just because that's what we've always done it. And so because of that, not to brag to it, but my campaigns have always outperformed everything else because of this broad range of diverse background.
What's really interesting when you say that, I think in my experience that's really something that is of value. I think a lot of times when people are hiring, they go, well, you haven't been in this industry or haven't been in this industry. And I see that just like you do, as having experience across multiple industries and understanding what happens with each one, and then how you take ideas and execution points and things like that from each one of those and bring them together is really a lot more valuable than, as you said, okay, well, we've done it this way for the last 20 years, and by God, we're not going to make a change because that's how we do it in tech or in auto or in quick service restaurants or whatever, the healthcare, whatever it may be, that's the way you do things. And I love the fact in hearing that, because we're in the same thought process there of how valuable that can be. So I guess my question then is, with all of this, what got you into the auto industry? Was it an intentional thing? Was it kind of like a lot of us, where you just almost kind of fell into it kind of thing, and it wasn't a purposeful jump? Or tell us a little bit about that.
Pure accident. I mean, as you know, Troy, nobody ever wakes up and says, I'm going to be working with car dealerships. It's like, car dealerships is such an old industry. It's been around for such a long time, hundreds of years since, the cars were invented. So, especially growing up here in Washington, where there's a lot of technology companies, my mind was always like, if I was ever going to start a company, it has to be something, with technology, some sort of a new, cool, new, innovative widget or something social media, like you never think about going to the old legacy industry and thinking there's room to disrupt. You think like, well, this industry is so old, there must be some major players, there must be doing something really good. They must know everything, there is to know. And what I've learned is by accident, my friend worked at a car dealership since she was 17 years old. And she was one of my best friends. Like we were inseparable. She was the last person I talked to before going to sleep. She was the first person I would talk to when I would wake up. And so because she's worked for car dealerships, naturally, she would always tell me about, day in the life of working at a car dealership, and what does it take to sell cars and things like that. And so by accident, I've uncovered a lot of issues in the automotive space when it comes to marketing, sales, customer experience. And then before I know it, I'm like, why didn't I do it? So it wasn't planned. It was just kind of like spur of the moment, just happened.
Sometimes I think, and that's what I enjoy about people like you, that it's like I see an opportunity here. Let's see what we can do to make it better. And I think too, in an industry, as you said, that's very legacy driven, and we do things the way we've done them. And as we kind of talk too, as I said, talking about the web side of things and what's going on now, I see a lot of, because there are a certain number of companies that are the kind of the approved vendor or whatever for every dealership, and you get and start looking at the websites that they have. Number one, they're all the same,
Mhm.
but number two, from a user experience standpoint, they're still thinking back as if this was 2002, 2003, where everybody was still doing all of their search and any activity that they were doing internet wise on desktop.
Yeah.
And so it's like all of a sudden you start looking at the data and figuring out, yeah, people are doing a lot of research, but it's not always on desktop. So what did you see? How did you, because I know that that's your focus is mobile first, and I think that is vitally important with where we are today. What what were you seeing, or kind of what led you to that? Um,
Yes, it's true. Actually, you were saying most people don't do research on a desktop. I actually don't think anybody does research on desktop. I think the only website traffic you see on a desktop is actually people at the dealership on their computers. If you were to probably eliminate the IP addresses from the dealership and see what percent of actually consumers visit the dealership website on a desktop, you'll see it's probably like less than 20%. I mean, what I see is over 70% of car shoppers visit dealership website on a mobile device. And it's interesting to me because whenever I talk to dealerships, and I always ask them like, well, dealership always tell me like, I want to grow my sales. How do I scale? How do I grow? How do I sell more cars? How do I become more profitable? And when I ask them, what do you think is going to take you to, double your sales? They all think they need to spend more money on advertisement. They think their problems are not getting enough website visitors. But the problem is actually that it's not that they're not getting enough website visitors, they're actually just not converting those website visitors. And the reason why they're not converting those website visitors is because their websites are built for desktop and all consumers are visiting their website on a mobile device. And, it's interesting to me, Troy, is, you're a marketer yourself. A lot of times when I talk to dealerships, one of the dealerships actually was once telling me the marketing doesn't work. And I'm like, and he was about to fire his marketing agency. And I'm like, it's not that the marketing doesn't work. It's not the agency is not doing a good job, is you give them a really poor website. And so no matter how great of a job they do with targeting, with messaging, with the, banner ad creators, whatever they're doing, if you're landing people on the poor customer experience, they're going to bounce. They're not going to convert. So the agency's hands are tied behind their back. You're giving them, it's making it difficult for agencies to actually do their job.
and that's a key point there, I think, to bring up, because again, it's always, I've seen over the years, and having my own marketing agency, is that it's always the agency's fault.
Yeah.
No matter what happens. And I think the key there that you start asking is, well, why do you think it's the agency's fault? What is that data that you're acquiring that's telling you it's their problem? Where and what part of that of the processes and all the things in terms of engagement with the customers, like you said, where is the where's the hole? Where is that weak link in the chain? And if you don't have that data, then you're just, it's kind of more of an emotional thing. It's saying, well, if it's not working, it sure can't be us. So it's got to be somebody else. So we'll
Yeah.
point the finger. Um, and like you said, I mean, the agency could drive 1 million visitors to your site, but if they aren't, if you're not working with them, which most of the time you're not, because you're stuck with whatever, again, whatever things that the OEMs are saying, okay, use these 5 people, 5 companies. Now you're stuck with whatever they're going to give you and don't have the ability to make those changes and understand what's working, what's not, and where are the things falling apart. So if it's falling apart once it gets to, you got 1 million visitors and you get 50 people converting, well, there's an issue. But the issue is not necessarily with the agency, unless that you've got that they have full control over the website development, which they 90% of the time, like I said, we work with a lot of dealers too, and part of our struggle is being able to get a lot of the information that we want to share and done in a proper way onto their websites, because we're having to deal with, again, companies that know, hey, well, who you going to change, because the OEMs want us to, you got to use us because that's what they're telling you. So there's really no option. So how can you work with a dealership, and what can you do to help get them away from that?
Yes, but Troy, it's interesting. When I worked at Microsoft, so my first year when I got hired at Microsoft, I was in charge of Office 365, the Word, Excel, PowerPoint, their cash cow product, basically. And so my job was, my goal was the first year to get 320,000 SMBs, so small business owners with less than 10 employees, to buy Office 365 directly online. And the goal was to acquire those customers at less than $60 cost per acquisition. That year, my first year, my SVP and GMs were telling us, hey, Office 365 direct business is growing really fast, but we can't seem to grow it any further because the more we spend money, the more inefficient we become. Mm-hmm. So that was my goal, 320,000 customers for maximum $60 cost per acquisition. That year, I ended with over 530,000 customers at $47 cost per acquisition. So not only was I able to almost double the actual goal, but also improve efficiencies. And as you know, Troy, usually when you try to scale, the less efficient you become. In this case, we actually became both. We increased the growth and we became more efficient. Mm-hmm. And the way we're able to do that is purely doing only one thing that we made the difference: landing page optimization, website optimization. I obsessed a year. We've completed over 55 landing page tests. And for, 55 might not seem like a lot for smaller companies, but for a company size like Microsoft, to do 55 landing page tests is actually really a massive undertaking, because it's a global company. And so how do you roll it out to, 60 countries and stuff like that?
Right.
So we really obsessed and focused on messaging and customer journey, and also how do you reduce friction and anxiety? Those are so critical. Like I always say, before I actually went into marketing, I used to be in sales, and that's actually helped me be a really good marketer, is because most marketers never done sales in their life. And so I used to always, before I would get on the call, when I was in sales, before I would get on the call with the customer, I would anticipate what are the sales objections I'm going to get, what are the friction, things I'm going to bump against you, and I'm ready to overcome those objections. And as you know, when you're on a phone with the customer, you have an opportunity to hear those objections and overcome them. But when somebody comes to your website or to your landing page, you have to, because if you didn't anticipate those objections and overcome them with your messaging, with your user experience or whatever, those people are going to bounce, and you never even know there was a sale to be made. So you have to anticipate those things and constantly think about it. If I was talking to this customer face to face, what are the questions? What are the concerns? What is the anxiety they're going to have that I should be immediately overcoming that? And so, I always talk about, like, in business, we have 3 competitive advantages. One, we could be cost leadership as a competitive advantage, meaning like, do you have the lowest, cheapest product? Unless you're Walmart, you can't compete on price, because in order to compete on price, you have to have such a huge volume that you're going to undercut all of your competitors, and you're going to make up for it, with volume.
Or just give your stuff away and go out of business.
Yeah, exactly. That's your only option. So as a car dealerships, especially a lot of, smaller dealerships that sell 80 cars or 100 cars, they're not a volume business. They're not Carvana. They can't compete on, the volume. So price differentiation, price leadership is not a competitive advantage for a dealership. The second option is product differentiation, meaning do you have a product that nobody else has? Because then if you have one of a kind product, then of course you could sell it, whatever you want, and you get customers just because you're one of the only company that has that kind of product. Well, car dealerships, they have no control of their product because they're reselling somebody else's product. They're reselling product that was manufactured by whatever the OEM, or they're used car dealership and they're selling every other product. So of course they have a little bit of a competitive advantage to say, hey, if let's say I'm in an area that where the demographic could only afford, $300 per month payment. I have the biggest selection of cars under $300 per month. That could give you a little bit of a competitive advantage, but overall, you have no control of your product.
Yeah, it's the same. Absolutely. I mean, a Ford's a Ford, no matter where.
Exactly. So the only last competitive advantage that dealerships have is the customer experience. And the best part about a customer experience as a competitive advantage, it's a sustainable competitive advantage because it doesn't cost much to offer a better customer experience versus a shitty experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the best part is the minute you improve the customer experience, you actually not only get more customers, but you increase your profitability because people are willing to pay more for better customer experience. I've done a lot of market research, and I would ask people and say, hey, tell me about the last time you bought a car. Why did you choose the dealership you chose? And very often I hear people say, you know what, I didn't have a lot of time, and I just approached this dealership and I said, just give me your best price. Don't waste my time. And he's like, I know that I probably paid $1,000, $2,000 more, but that's okay. I don't care. As long as I save time, as long as I didn't have to haggle, as long as I didn't have to do all those other things. And so that's, when I show dealerships our case studies, when dealerships switch to us and their lead doubled, tripled, quadrupled. And very often dealerships would be like, well, what did you guys do differently? Did you guys change the marketing? I'm like, no, the marketing did not change. It's not marketing. It's customer experience. If you improve customer experience, everything else changes.
You are singing right from the same hymnal that we have here. That is the experience, and you made a really good point. This is something I've said too. What customers are looking for right now, it's because you have a finite amount of it, is time. And if you're doing things to cut my time of doing something to make it easier for me, as you said, to have less friction, to make sure that you are really honoring everything with what you're doing, to make sure that my time is, because my time is valuable. I can't make any more of it. I can make more money.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to do the things that make my life easier and help that process and develop that relationship with me, and we have now as we become a relationship, things are so much different in terms of being able to, as you said, hey, I'll spend a couple grand more just because you made my life easy, because I know I'm breaking this down over a 4, 5, 6, 7 year period.
Exactly. Insurance amount of payment for them, there was probably like what, $10, $20 difference more per month, but the consumer is willing to give that up, especially now with the, with the DoorDash and the Instacarts and, the instant gratification. Like Bill Gates actually even once said, he's like, the one thing I cannot afford more of is time. I mean, this is the richest person in the world. And he says he cannot afford more time. We're all short of time. And especially if you think about millennials and Gen Zs, that's a generation that grew up with social media and cell phones. They don't know anything else but instant gratification and saving themselves time and doing things easier. And so we really have to adjust. And I've always said, sometimes when you've always done certain things a certain way and you've been doing it for a very long time, you're a prisoner of your past. Mm-hmm. And you have to overcome that.
Well, and I think the key there too is we kind of talking about from a web perspective and experience and time. It's like, okay, if I'm going to come to your website, what are you doing to make the experience the most efficient it can be for me? So you're saving my time so I can find what I need and creating that experience there. It's not just the experience that you have once you maybe walk into the dealership or working there, like you said. That web presence is the salesperson 24/7, and what are you doing as a dealership to make sure that salesperson is making my life easy? And
a lot of thing is, Troy, it's a lot of times when I talk to dealerships, and you've probably witnessed this too, especially in the independent world. It's a little bit less of an issue with the OEM world, but independent world, there's so many dealerships that would be using cheap website providers for like $99 per month or $300 per month. And I can't wrap my head around that. Like I literally cannot, because how much money are dealerships spending on having, the showroom rent? Even if it's a really bad area, you're still spending at least, three, four, $5,000, on rent. You're spending money on a floor plan and getting the inventory. You're spending money going to auctions and buying and procuring the inventory, hiring, employees, salespeople, commission. And then after spend all that investment, they're buying a website for $99 or $400 per month. But the website is it's the first interaction the consumer has with your dealership. Your website is when consumers are doing the research online, they're eliminating dealerships not to visit. And so imagine how much money dealerships are spending on advertisement. Like I know dealerships are spending $50,000 per month in advertisement when they're driving traffic to a $400 per month website. How does that make any sense?
Well, and like I'm completely agreeing. Like you said, when you get into a lot of these websites, and it's there's no experience, there's no thought as to what is it that I'm as a consumer when I'm looking, what's going on, and I really believe that a lot of these legacy systems that are out there that I'm not going to bring any names up, but some of these legacy site builders are much more. IT people than they are marketing people, in the sense of, yeah, we can make all this stuff work and we can get it together, but there's no real thought in terms of design and layout and what the experience is like. And that's one of the things, because we'll go look at, again, with our clients, what their website is looking like. And
Mhm.
so many times, again, you said, what's your differentiation? Well, I can look at 15 different websites out there, and if I just change the logo up in the top left corner, it'd be the same thing.
Yeah,
So it's
and
like, how do I? It becomes confusing when there's nothing. As I'm looking at something like that, if I don't see some sort of differentiation, it's like I can't won't even remember. Well, okay, yeah, I saw something on somewhere, but I can't remember what it was because everything looks the same. So
yeah,
you've got that issue, and then the other issue, like you said, from an experience standpoint, is you get on these sites and there it's like everything is it's like somebody's just taken a crayons and just throwing them all at you with colors and all this stuff going on, but you don't really know, okay, how do I navigate this so that I can find what I'm really looking for?
so you hit a nail and they have a couple of things. So one is about other website providers. They're run by full stack developers, and instead of actually UX UI designers, and that's a big difference. A lot of times I'll see people post on social media and saying Lyman 321 Ignition is not the only mobile first company. There's other companies like that, and I'm like, okay, give me an example. And then they'll give me an example. I'm like, that's mobile responsive. Mobile responsive is code, it's how you build the website to render. Mobile first is a UX UI. And the fact that the people don't even realize the difference between those two.
Well, it's a mindset.
Well,
And that's the kick, because if you're not thinking mobile first, as you said, you're designing again around desktop, and then with responsive, and like people don't get. I mean, to make a site responsive at this point is not very difficult. I mean, you can take
no,
your
it's just the code.
WordPress site and put everything it shrinks down. But then again, yeah, it's responsive, meaning it shrinks down to fit the screen. But that
Yeah.
doesn't mean the experience is the same. And those are things that I've seen too, where it's like you look at the desktop and go, okay, I can kind of figure out what I'm doing here, and then you get to the mobile, and it's like, okay, where is this? Because people don't realize the screen's a lot smaller, so you've got to be very thoughtful about that process of how are you getting people to move through a journey that you would like them to move. Or I guess I almost look at it as, and something I saw earlier today, actually I was reading, is you've got the customer journey, and then you've got the sales funnel, or the actions that the dealer in this case is wanting somebody to take. How are they matching?
Yeah.
Are you looking at your design to make sure that the way that the customer wants to look at things is that you're fitting in that, not vice versa, that you're trying to jam them into your way?
There's a really famous market research company called Matlab Institute. I've been following them since I was 20 years old. And you know about them, right, Troy?
I've got, so if you could see my desktop, I've got little links, the shortcuts. I
Uh-huh.
love them. I'm I get the emails and all that. So I laugh because I've been following them now too for probably, I don't know, at least 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, Matlab Institute, if somebody who's listening to this doesn't know them, they don't just specialize in one industry. They work with every industry. And their goal, they do a lot of experiments to find out how to get more consumers to say yes. And so they talk about the sales funnel. And so they said this typical traditional sales funnel looks like this. You start from the top and you go to the bottom. And what they're actually saying is that the funnel is actually not like that, because that's assuming that to get a sale, it's as easy as water, going through the funnel.
Right.
But we know that to get a sale, it's actually really hard. So really, the funnel should be upside down. So it's starting with a small point, and the goal is with sales and marketing is you're trying to collect micro yeses along the way to get to the ultimate yes, which is a sale. And so that's exactly actually how our mobile first website platform was built at 3-to-1 Ignition, is that we literally in my trainings, like when I go to talk to a digital dealer, when I talk at the NIADA, like I present a slide about Matlab Institute, and you know how they have a probability of a conversion theory? Have you heard of that one?
Uh-huh.
And so I talk about like the probability of a conversion. So meaning like in order to get a yes, ultimate yes, which is a sale, it depends on these variables, and it depends on one, how motivated is somebody is. So like if somebody's car broke down, obviously they're going to be more motivated to buy a car now than somebody who's like, oh, it's time for me to upgrade my car. Second one is, how clear is the value proposition? The value proposition is both the dealership, why buy from your dealership, and why buy this car. And going back to Troy, what you were saying about, every website looking the same, is one of the, besides the customer experience component missing, is the messaging. Because other website providers, they just write copy for Google bots. They just keywords copy, which is great. So your website ranked organically, but now what? How are you actually going to convert the visitor? And the clarity of the value proposition is so huge. And that's one of the things that I focus on. All of my copywriters are direct response copywriters, not just SEO. SEO is great, that's table stakes. But my copywriters all have experience writing direct response copy. So going back to the probability of a conversion theory, the second one is how clear is the value proposition. Third one is what's the incentive to take action. Fourth one, it's the friction. What are the friction elements in the website is going to prevent somebody from actually, buying a car? So whether it's, if somebody is on a mobile device and they're typing with one finger, that's a friction. Like imagine you having to fill out a credit application with one finger.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you make it easier for somebody to actually complete the credit application with one finger? We actually have a 69% completion rate, which is like unheard of.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, credit applications are really long. So how do you get a 69% completion rate? Well, you really emphasize and focus on the customer experience doing it with one finger and all the shortcuts we give them. So, and the last one, which is the most important one, is anxiety. And the probability of getting a customer to say yes, it's anticipating their anxieties and overcoming those anxieties, those fears. People are risk averse, so they're more likely to do nothing. And actually, it's interesting. There's another company called what is it called? Shoot, I forgot the name of it, but I found out about them when I worked at Microsoft. And they talk about if you ask any business owner and you say, who's your competition? And they'll list out their competition, like a dealership next door. Maybe they'll say, national competitors like Carvana, whatever. But your number one competitor is actually not a competitor who you think it is. Your number one competitor is status quo. Do nothing, make no decisions, status quo. Because let's say, for example, if 100 people visited your dealership website, let's say 20% of them are going to buy. Mm-hmm. That means 80% are going to do nothing, make no decision. So if you really increase your sales, do you focus on getting more sales from your competitor going after that 20%? Or do you focus on how do I get more of that 80% to change their behavior and to actually buy from me? And that has to do with anxiety. It's eliminating anxiety, making the status quo as the unsafe choice and making the changes the safer choice. Mm-hmm. And it's all psychology. And so, besides the user experience, the messaging, the value proposition, anxiety, it's so critical to getting the ultimate yes, which is a sale.
And I think you had put a very good point there about the psychology of things. And that's why, it's 20, 30 years into my career, I look back and go, man, I wish I would have spent more time in school in psychology and learning that. I mean, obviously you do now as you grow, but it's like, that is such an important part of what's going on when you do, are creating these experiences, is thinking about the psychology of your buyer. And sometimes I think that's why it's important for dealerships, but I mean any company really is to have that third party, somebody like working with you all that can look at things and from a disinterested kind of, we're looking at things very scientific and data driven and those kind of things, because you do tend to get when it's yours, you get a little bit of emotional kind of thing. And it's like, well, this is how I would do it. But you got to remember that, you may not be your customer. So it's understanding what your prospective customers, who they are, and then what those psychology points are that you need to work to in your design and all of the things that you're talking about there to get those micro yeses and move them along and actually get them to take action.
Yeah, the great thing is because majority of like 99% of the dealership websites don't communicate the value proposition clearly, besides, keyword stuffing, copy for SEO purposes,
Mm-hmm.
that if a dealership in the area actually does start communicating, we see such an crazy numbers. Like one of my dealerships said they just went live with us in October. What month are we in? So they went live with us.
November. Yeah.
I forget what month it is. So they went live with us September 15th. And I was talking to the owner of the dealership and he kept saying, it doesn't matter what he tries to do, his sales are not growing. And a couple of days ago, I saw on social media, he posted after 1 month being live with us, he had a record sales month in a 3-year history of his dealership. And the only thing he changed was his website, the experience, the removing the friction and communicating the value proposition. It's just so amazing how easy it is to do. It's so easy to do. And yet it could have the biggest impact on the dealership.
Well, and those are some of the things I think about is, I was talking to another gentleman, Eric Brown with Ask Auto. And one of the things they talk about there too is understanding from a customer perspective, as you said before, what are you using this car or this vehicle for? I mean, a car, truck, whatever, and start thinking about that too as you bring somebody into your website to be able to see different approaches of this is where the value is to you based upon a specific vehicle. So if you're helping me as that dealership, being able to pick out what's going on from what do I need or what's going to best suit my needs, now you're adding value there too. And I think that's always the important thing is, from the dealership perspective, sales perspective, is adding value to that customer, not just in the product or service, but all of those touch points along the way. And so I think that's a key there too that you've talked about is having those kind of thoughts and ideas when you're developing a website, and then making sure that from a mobile perspective that they can find that quickly and take action.
Exactly. So, I mean, like with the mobile, let's say, for example, you have a paragraph of copy or you have a headline. Because on a mobile screen, you have a smaller screen size.
Right.
It's important to know how to communicate that same message with few words as possible. That's where the direct response copywriters are very helpful, because it's a lot easier to say, communicate a benefit when you have, paragraphs to write about than when you have
Right.
words to say it. And on a mobile device, if you have a really big chunk of text, nobody's going to read it. It reduces comprehension level. And so the key is to be able to communicate the value proposition, but thinking about the mobile user. How easy is it for somebody to read it on a mobile device?
Right. No, completely. And I think that's the key. And it's like, because you want to, you feel like it's like, okay, I've got to get everything out here. I've got to tell everything about what's going on, that you forget that people aren't going to read all that. It's not, and that's where there's a bit of a challenge when you start talking about, person to person. You can talk a little more and do some of the things, and you have more time at least to share your thoughts and ideas, but where people may listen. But when you're talking about on a small screen and people, I don't have time to read all this.
Yeah, it's right. It's interesting because a lot of times, I always talk about this book called Think Fast, Think Slow. Just because somebody could actually read it doesn't mean they're going to easily comprehend it. And people are just, we're casually browsing on our couches as we're watching TV and looking at cars. So the key is, how do you get their attention as they're, scrolling things through it casually? They're not doing taxes. They're not, concentrating. They're just casually visiting the website. And it's all about how do you communicate the value proposition in as few words as possible. One of my favorite formulas, I don't know if you've heard of it before, it's called 4 U's. Have you heard of that formula?
I am not.
Okay, you should Google it because it's one of my favorite
Well,
formulas. It works for everything.
as,
So,
as soon as we're finished, that will probably be the first thing I do when we get done here.
uh, so the formula basically talks about if, let's say, you're writing an email, or let's say you're doing a website, landing page, or whatever. So the most important thing is the headline, because headline tells the consumer why should they actually, continue reading it. Well,
Hmm.
how do you know somebody's going to want to continue reading it? Well, it's based on the 4 U's. If you could actually meet 3 out of the 4 U's, you have a pretty good chance for success. So the 4 U's, the first one is, number one is ultra specific. The more specific you are, the more relevant you are. A lot of times I see business owners of all calibers, not just car dealerships, they try to appeal to all, and what happens is they appeal to none. you know
Right.
so they're like, well, I don't want to say this because I don't want to eliminate this audience, I don't want to eliminate that audience. So now the value proposition is very blurred, because now you sound like everybody else. So the number one rule in 4U says ultra specific. The more specific you are, the more relevant you are. The second U is useful, utilitarian. So, how can I use this information? Well, when you're too vague, when you're not ultra specific, then it becomes less useful. So what happens is when you write the headlines that are very specific. So as an example, one dealership in Arizona, I saw he had a headline that says, premier luxury car dealership in Tucson, Arizona. Well, I'm like, well, what makes it premier? It's so vague. So you could take that logo, replace it with any other logo, and it's still going to sound exactly the same. It's still going to be true. Versus another example dealership that we wrote a copy for. They're in Texas, in a population of 4,000 people, and they have the most amount of cars for under $300 per month budget. And I'm
Hmm.
like, now that's relevant, that's ultra specific, and that's useful. So that's exactly what the headline says: is biggest selection of cars under $300. So imagine if you're a consumer and you want to save time and you want to have a lot of variety of choices, and you only could afford $300 per month maximum, where are you going to go? You're going to go to that dealership versus dealership that has a headline that says premier luxury car dealership in Arizona. Why? What are the reasons to believe? Why should I believe you? And so that's the second of U. The third U is, so let's see, ultra specific, utilitarian, unique is the third one. And of course, naturally, if your headline was ultra specific, if it was useful, then it becomes unique, because not everybody else sounds the same. And the last one is urgent, which is harder to do, create urgency, unless you're running some sort of promotions,
Right.
things like that. But it's okay, because as long as you met those 3 U's, you'll be pretty successful. And so, the key with the, dealerships spend a lot of money on marketplaces like Auto Trader and Car Gurus. But when dealerships are on those websites, they're competing based on price. Versus when they're driving people to their website, this is a chance for them to actually not compete on price, not compete on just, do you have unique inventory? It's an opportunity for them to compete on the value proposition. And the 4 U's is actually one of my favorite formulas to use for that.
I love that. And I think why, and again, you know, what causes a lot of the, not just dealerships, but just, companies in general is it's a little bit harder to do that. It takes a little more work, to take that broad brush where you can just kind of go, okay, let's just kind of, do a word salad out here that gets, it kind of covers all these things. Like you said, oh, we're the best, so premier, and these very big, broad words. That's fairly easy to do. I almost say it's kind of like writing a song. If you had a bunch of words to just be able to, write thousands and thousands of words, you can get it across. But what can you do in a, 3 or 4 minute time frame to get that story and get that feeling? It's kind of the same concept is you've got to really have a true story that, and choosing your words and making all of those things work,
Yeah.
but that's not easy. And I think that's the big challenge is we all, are humans want everything easy,
Yes.
but it's not, but easy isn't always effective. And so I love what you've, those 4 U's, I think is something that should be kind of, shouted from the mountaintops a lot higher, and helping people understand that, again, investing some of that time up front is going to do a lot more for you in terms of return on investment than just activity for activity's sake and going, great, we got a website now, we've spent X dollars on it and it's up, and let's kind of forget about it. It's there really has to be a lot more thought about, as you said before, who are your customers? Well, if we want to be the people who are going to reach that, hey, I want a $300 and under a month payment, and you've got some focus and clarity on that, then you can then start writing copy that is focused on that and making sure that you're thinking versus just as trying to cast as wide a net as possible and just hope that you grab a few things,
Something fixed. Mm.
your customers as they come through.
Yeah, I mean, Troy, as you know, the dealership website or any business website is the most important thing. So, I can't imagine starting a company like with my 321 Ignition company and not investing everything I have in, the first interaction consumers or customers have with our website. Your website is so important. I mean, especially now with the digital transformation, everybody talks about digital retail. Digital retail is just a checkout button, but a digital transformation, consumers want and expect omni-channel experience, meaning like they expect to be able to do some stuff online, some stuff in person, and they expect to have the same experience as they're doing things online as they are interacting with you in person. And so your website is that tool, and dealerships really have to go through the digital transformation and really, cater to companies or to cater to consumers and how they want to do business with you. And it all starts with a website. I can't imagine not investing all of my resources on a website. It's the most important part of the business.
Well, and something that you brought up a while ago, talking about how your competitors are not just the other dealerships around, and this goes back to what you're talking about from a digital transformation standpoint. Who are some of your other competitors? Well, they are the Amazons and the Starbucks, and I'm just pulling some things out, Chick-fil-A or whatever the case may be. It's all of these other companies that are out there that have now set expectations for customers that say it can be done this way. It can be customer centric and focused on making sure the customer has that omni-channel experience. So if I'm expecting it, if everybody else can do it, then I'm going to have that same expectation when I come to an auto dealership. It's like, well, if they can do it, why can't you?
Yeah.
And I think that's a key that they a lot forget. And when you look at websites, like I said, they're having to work with these legacy companies that are out there that have been doing it the same way. And those companies are not thinking in terms of, okay, what can we do to create a digital transformation? We're just they're for all intents and purposes, they're order takers and just replacing blocks
Yeah.
of content on the web. There is no real thought
Yeah.
in
I mean,
terms of a company like with a company like 321. It's like you're thinking about things from the very beginning in a completely different way. So it's a
yeah.
complete mindset change versus the old legacy companies.
Yeah, and it's not even just that. In addition to that, what I've noticed is, now that we've been working with dealerships for 2 years, I've noticed dealerships sign up for a lot of third-party widgets. And those third-party widget providers would just start sending, canned email to the website provider saying, dealer just signed up for this. Please add it here, 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 here. And there's really no rhyme or reason or why they're saying to do all these things or what else is on a website or anything else. And what I've noticed is that our other website providers, their support team are just order takers. They're just there, to close tickets. Their job is to close tickets as fast as possible at the lowest cost to the company. At a 321 Ignition, I train my support team to be consultants and advisors on the customer experience journey. I always say, we're not just a website provider from a technology. We're supposed to be experts at websites. We're supposed to be the subject matter experts. So when I'm not going to name names, but when certain vendors are sending us, blank emails and saying, do this, this, and this, I always instruct my team members, don't just take that and do it because that's going to destroy the customer experience, but really come back to them and advise them on things. And quite honestly, Troy, I mean, it's very costly to do that. I mean, at this point, and I'm not just hiring junior tech support people, I'm actually hiring marketing people.
Right.
And if you think about, at other website providers, if their profit margins are so thin just because, the OEMs, force them to trim down, or there's whoever, in the middle taking revenue share, or dealerships are beating up the website provider. I always say it doesn't make sense for dealerships to beat up the website provider. Though, you're going to pay for it some way or another. You're going to pay for it whether you're going to be wasting money in advertisement,
Right.
or you're going to be paying for it where, you're hurting your sales or some other way. So consultants, is your website provider just the order taker, or is there actually your partners and your consultants and your advisors and subject matter experts? Like, I never want my dealerships to be the ones calling me and saying, hey, Lyman, did you find out about this new SEO algorithm update? No, we should be the first ones to know about it.
Oh, exactly correct. Well, let me ask this then, because we've talked about a lot of good stuff. How can you help, or what can you do? Because again, and this is not, again, where we are here within binary. It's not something that we're looking at on a daily basis. But how do you help these dealerships that are maybe stuck with some of these other things? What is that process? Because that's always been a frustration for us. Is, again, you get out there and you talk to them, and the dealers feel like, I don't know what to do to get away from it. This is what the OEM says, or we're trapped. Or how can you? And I think that's a real key, is if you can help the dealers figure out how to get away from that. What is that process, so that they can start working with you and doing things in a different way? So
Yeah.
can you explain a little bit of what dealerships can do, or how you can help them
Yeah.
get away from that?
Yeah, we actually work with a lot of OEM dealerships, even though we're not OEM approved. There's a lot of workarounds. So one, not every OEM has a required vendor list. A lot of them have a preferred vendor list, and it's important to
Right.
really understand the difference. So one, if like for example, Nissan and Honda, Toyota, like those are all preferred. The Maserati is a preferred. So with those dealerships, the first question is, if let's say OEM requires mandates for you to use a certain vendor, what are the downsides if you don't use that vendor? Like, what are the co-op dollars that they're giving you? How is that funded? Are, like, for example, some OEMs I know, they'll give you co-op dollars for upper funnel campaigns, like TV advertising, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'll ask a dealership, I'm like, do you even do that? They're like, no. And I'm like, then who cares? Because majority of your traffic is going to come from Google My Business, from Facebook, from, Google Organic. And that's all local SEO. That's all mobile traffic. I'm like, you're not going to get any benefit from OEM. So you might as well just go use whoever you want who's going to help you convert that traffic. So that's, one workaround. Another one is we work with a lot of auto groups. And so we power the group sites. Another workaround is, of course, it's the least favorite one, is dealership could get a second website. So a lot of our dealerships, they'll downgrade their OEM vendor to the lowest package, and then they'll sign up with us for the other one. So yes, you're paying a little bit more because now you have two websites to match. Let's say you downgraded your OEM vendor to $800. So it's okay, you lost $800, but in the grand scheme of things, who cares about $800 if all of your paid media is going to perform better, if you can increase your sales and increase your gross profit. So we have dealers that do that as well. And the other option is we actually launched the mobile first plugin. So what it is we put a code on a dealership website, on their mobile responsive website, with their OEM approved vendor. And when somebody visits their website on a mobile device, you see a little pop-up. Just like, for example, if you go to Best Buy, like when you go to bestbuys.com website on a mobile device, you'll usually see a little pop-up that says download on mobile app. So it's a very similar type of a little pop-up that says, view mobile first experience. When a customer clicks on that, it redirects them to a dealership subdomain name. So it would be mobilefirst.domainname.com. And at that point, then we actually power the mobile first experience. So then this way, dealership doesn't have to change the whole website. They could just put in our plugin. And when somebody comes on a mobile device, they'll click on that and they'll land on our mobile first experience.
That's interesting. That's definitely thinking outside of the box and finding a way to make sure that they're getting what they need, and still kind of keeping the OEM happy.
Exactly. We actually quite honestly grabbed that idea from Roadster, because Roadster has express.com domain.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exactly what we've done, is that ours is mobile first.domain name, just like express.domain name. And now it doesn't have all the SEO content, because the goal of this plugin is not to help dealerships rank organically. The goal of the plugin is to convert the traffic you're getting on a mobile device. And so it's easier and faster to launch it. It's very cheap. It's only $6.99 per month, versus a full website could be anywhere from $1,299 to $2,500. So if you could imagine, if a dealer is spending $50,000 in advertisement, $6.99 for a mobile first plugin is going to help you convert more of that traffic, and it's fast and easy for us to launch and set up. So, and a dealership doesn't have to switch a website provider. They could still use their current OEM approved vendor.
Well, and I think a key that you talk about there too is from organic search and some of those things, that the better the experience, the better you're going to rank, because it's everything has gotten away from just keyword, as you talked about earlier, just keyword stuffing and doing those kind of things. And I think too that so when you start weighing, okay, is it better that I look at this from a keyword situation where I think I might get more organic lift in the search, or do I have a better experience and then utilize other methods of driving people to that website? And Google My Business, which is what did they just change the name now to Google Profile or something? So,
Uh,
so, so they, but whatever it is, being there in that three stack in your maps and doing those kind of things too is ultra important in terms of being visible, because that's, I think, a lot where people are looking anyway. So there's a lot of those things to think about in terms of how important the actual user experience is versus, okay, is my site organically ranked at the top, one or two, but I still have I'm in the Google Maps. So it's kind of, you have to think about all of that, and that's where I think the key is that, and I'm assuming you would agree, is thinking about what your business outcomes are and what you're trying to achieve, who your audiences are, what their experiences are. Think about those things before you look at, as you said, okay, well, we're getting some co-op dollars that we're not using. So
yeah,
why would you, so there's a lot of those thoughts that I think that you brought up now that maybe a lot of dealerships don't even think about. They're just like, well, crap, we don't want to lose our co-op money. Well, you're not spending it anyway, so
yeah.
why lose over here and have that it's really a cost. It's an opportunity cost of not doing things right because you don't want to give up some money that you're not spending anyway.
Yeah. And in addition to that, with the OEM world, no vendor is ever going to become OEM approved unless dealerships from that OEM already using you. So the more dealerships continue just to use whoever their OEM approved vendor is, the more they're stuck with them, because the OEM is not gonna take a chance on a vendor who their dealers haven't used. It's
Right.
a for them. So if dealerships do want change, if they do want innovation, they have to champion the vendors. you know um Otherwise they'll still continue using the old legacy providers. And that's why, my hypothesis, I don't work at those companies, but that's one of the reasons why I think those other cookie cutter website providers are not really innovating, is because there's no need. you
Well,
know
yeah. I mean, if you've got it where it's you're just bringing in and the revenue's rolling in, and all you've got to do, as you said before, is just keep taking the orders and just get by. Why would you innovate? I mean, innovation comes when it was somebody is wanting to improve, and that's where you have to have the dealerships wanting to improve and really demanding it a little bit more. And I think that's something that's very interesting. And you brought up a good point, because I hear that a lot of, well, that it's out there. Well, how do we get away from these, you know, OEM approved website providers?
They have to
Well,
champion. They have to actually go to bed. Like, the thing is, like, I've noticed, is most people are don't like conflict. They don't like, going up against anyone. And so it really takes you know progressive, innovative dealers to actually go and say, no, this is my investment. Yes, I'm a franchise owner of this dealership, but it's my livelihood too. And who you're giving us an option is not no longer a good valid option, and they have to champion new vendors themselves. Otherwise they'll just be stuck using existing providers.
so dealers, don't keep complaining. Do something. I mean, really get out there and put some effort into it, because, like I said, having somebody like Lyman with 321 and being able to think differently, you need that consultant on your web development side of things just as much as you have for all of your F&I products and sales and all the other things that you're doing. It's like, if you're just going to kind of, it's almost like they've just relegated it to, okay, we've got to do this, and there we go. So it's, don't complain, find ways to make those changes, come up with solutions that are out there.
Yes.
And obviously they're out there. It takes a little bit of look and takes a little bit of energy and time. But again, as you said, or what is your goal as a dealership owner, as a business owner? Is it to make, improve
So,
yeah, it's like, but you want to keep improving and you want to do the things right. You want to, impress your customers and all those things. Then put a little effort in up front, and the benefits down the road will pay off in spades.
Yeah, the enemy of great is good. We're content with having a good website, a good, sales employees, whatever it might be, and it's preventing us from getting to the great.
I'll question at this point when with what I've seen, if any of
Uh-huh.
them are even good. I mean, they're more like below average at best. Because again, I've not seen anything, as you just kind of do searching in general of websites that are out there that you go, wow, these guys get it.
Mm.
It's just I don't see it, and I think this is, I want to push people like you who are thinking differently and doing things differently that can help the industry. And that's the whole, has been the whole purpose of this podcast. Again, is to provide value and knowledge and insight to folks so that they can take action. You know,
I
sit, sit,
appreciate it. Thank you, Troy. I really,
sit, sitting still will get you nowhere,
yes, exactly.
except collecting dust. That's what happens when something sits still. It collects dust. It's not growing and making, improving your life in any way.
Yes. It's like my grandma always said, if you're going to do something, do it all the way, have an impact. Otherwise, what's the point of wasting time doing it? So
Amen. Amen.
if you're
Well,
going to have a dealership and if you're going to do marketing, you might as well do a really good marketing, really good, website and get more ROI out of it.
absolutely. Well, Lyman, thank you so much for your time today and all of this great knowledge. Like I said, this is one of the things I love about this podcast too. I learned something. So now I will, as soon as we're finished up here, I'm going to go do a little research on the 4Us and make sure that I am thinking in that mindset when with other marketing things that I'm doing here independently of, all of this, because I think it's really important and it just helps me too to educate more people. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
I greatly appreciate it. So have a great rest of your day, great weekend, and I will look forward to talking with you soon. Hopefully, we'll catch up at one of the conferences somewhere along the way in person. And like I said, I've just really enjoy and learning from people like you because you've got so much to share. So keep it
Thank
up,
you.
and thank you very much. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Have
All
a good
right,
Bye.
take care. Bye.